procedure.
Oh, they're
And
renovating
the doctor said, I'm sending you right back up to T12.
Sure.
Yeah. To take a quick roll call.
Thanks, Mayor. Mayor Devine.
Here.
Rossi Manka. Amanda Nowak. David Roshka.
Here.
Wayne Clark.
Yes.
Brian Frank. Nope, not here. Possibly. We'll see. Well, we have 4 present, which is a quorum, plus the mayor, so we're good to go.
All right, let's roll.
Okay.
Item C will be the approval of the minutes from our meeting in October.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any changes? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it, the minutes are approved. We'll move on to section D, and we will begin with items 2A, 2B.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, so our first item today is Magic Auto Repairs. This is a proposed automobile repair shop to be located at 1230 South 60th Street, right at the intersection of 60th and Madison. This is a new tenant for a former industrial building in the C3 district. Is considered special use, and then there is a public hearing scheduled for the December 14th Common Council meeting. So just a little history about the property. This is the former home of Blair Painting. The man who owns that company is now leasing this property out. It's been an office warehouse for a variety of light industrial uses going back to the 1970s. This is kind of a change of use here. The new company, Magic Auto Repairs, expects to service about 2 to 3 vehicles at any given time. They're going to be operating Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., pretty normal business hours, and then they'll be doing by appointment on Saturday. On the right are just some pictures of the site as it is right now. You can see this blue building is the main kind of site there. Then there's this fenced-in lot back there, which we'll see some more pictures of later, as well as some landscaping around the edges. So the site and landscaping plan is shown on the right. The applicant is not really proposing any major changes. The biggest one being replacing the existing fence with an in-kind replacement. This fence, as it is built right now, wraps around the entire property. It is wood on the south and I guess this is the east and north and south. And then it is chain link with screening facing west. This fence is in kind of poor condition along the alley, and so as part of this proposal, the applicant is going to be replacing the existing fences in kind throughout this whole site. We also think that this fencing just provides some good screening for the potential use. A couple other changes are there's going to be a proposed refuse location out of visibility to the public. As you can see right here, right in this picture, the refuse is kind of in the line of sight of this entrance here. And as the applicant has spoke to us about, they will be proposing to move this over here. We'll get to that in the conditions later on. And then they're going to be retaining the existing landscaping and the rest of the site layout. You can see this pretty much just a paved lot in the middle there and landscaping around the edges. So our staff recommends approval subject to these conditions. some details on the new perimeter fence, a gate closure added along West Madison Street. And then as we have written right now in our conditions, we say the location and details of a new four-sided refuse enclosure. After talking to the applicant, they made it known that they think it would be best for them to be able to do a just enclosure or a refuse location that's going to be shielded from the public, but they wouldn't necessarily want to be building that four-sided refuse enclosure. And we think that's pretty agreeable. They've proposed to us to kind of tuck it away, I guess, in this back corner here, between the lean-to shed and this fencing, so it wouldn't be visible to the public when the main entry is open. And so we think that's agreeable. So we'd like to propose to have the language here amended to read refuse location and details added site plan, just so we have that on the site plan itself. A couple other things being just a construction schedule, closed exterior gates after business hours, closed main building overhead doors during business operations, and any outdoor storage being indicated on the plan. So just some standard conditions for this use here. We'd also want some lighting plans submitted to the Planning and Zoning Office.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What about like a paint job? Fresh coat paint job. It looks like some of the painting on the top is. I guess it's just the picture, but.
On the building here?
Mhm.
Okay, let's see.
It might be the photos. I mean,
Oh, is it the
the
photo? I
building's
can't-
in actually
Yeah.
pretty good shape.
There's this little lean-to shed which isn't visible from the public, which I think it isn't painted to be the same as the building, but yeah.
If you go back one slide, on the top there, the
Okay,
flaky.
up there.
Yeah, what is that?
It may be something with the roofing there as well.
Okay.
That could be the roofing material.
Is that something that the city will go take a look at and see if it's
We
a
could-
hazard or anything?
Yeah, we can double check that just to make sure it's good shape. Yeah.
Any other questions? It's the pleasure of the commission. Anyone want to approve it?
I'd move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries.
Cool. Thank you.
Now we'll take up item 3.
Thank you, Mayor. So item 3 is for a new proposed shopping center called Alpha House Strip Mall. This is going to be located at 3411 South 108th Street, so on the corner of South Wolmer Road and South 108th Street. So this new retail shopping center would be about 4,000 square feet and have 3 tenant spaces. This is zone C4, a commercial district, and so this general retail is permitted in this district. This is just site landscaping and architecture. There's not a special use involved. So a little history about the site. This used to be the location of Double Dragon, a Chinese restaurant that had been open for about 30 years, and it closed in 2016. This lot's been vacant for the past 5 years. This picture on the bottom kind of shows the existing conditions. Just basically the paved lot is still kind of there, and everything else is kind of just discarded. The applicant envisions 3 future tenants: a coffee shop, a nail salon, and then some other user, potentially some sort of medical office or other type of office space. So the hours of operation are yet to be determined because none of these tenants are moving in as part of this. So the floor plan, pretty basic layout. There'd be 3 tenant spaces. Tenant A, which is on the southern part of the building, this would be that proposed coffee shop. There'd be access to a little patio out here. Tenant B would be the proposed nail salon. So there's this the only real difference between this and the other spaces is that there's these kind of small studio spaces for the employees there. And then tenant C over here to the north. So pretty basic. All these businesses would be facing Highway 100 and have rear entries for employees and service and stuff. So here, this is the site and landscaping plan. At the northwest corner of the lot is where the building would be. So this is Highway 100 right here. This is Wolmer Road. The building would be located kind of on this western half of the property towards the north end. There would be a new driveway added off Wolmer Road to service the refuse enclosure, which would be back here. Then you would have, just south of the building, this outdoor patio, some outdoor seating for the coffee shop. There's going to be a bike rack as well as some plantings there. And upon the request of staff, the applicant proposed to add a little concrete walk. So if people coming from South Wilmer Road, if they're coming from there, they'd be able to just access the site from this side. Or if people are parked along the street here. Then the east side is the parking lot. There'd be a existing drive approach here, which would be closed as part of this, and this northern driveway would be retained. There's 14 parking spaces, including one ADA stall that meets our parking requirements. And as you can see, there's going to be some plantings proposed along the borders of the entire property here, and as well as a proposed freestanding sign right here with some landscaping around there as well. So the architectural plan, the lower portion of the building would be primarily storefront glazed windows along the east and south side here. This is the south elevation. There'd be these pillars, which are just concrete block with a gray stone face. And then along the back side, there'd be these just gray concrete block to kind of fill in the space there. The upper portion is dark gray wood siding with a light gray wood trim. You see these decorative gooseneck lights to kind of highlight some of the architectural features and provide some light for the future signs above the different tenant spaces. And then there'd be red awnings above each of these primary storefronts that face Highway 100. There's also, here's the refuse enclosure that would be with materials that are matching. They kind of pair along with the facade.
Hey, Zach.
Yeah.
Jim, did you have samples you want to show? Or, yep, okay. Yep.
Yes.
Samples at bottom, so. Ready, I guess, yeah, maybe feel free.
Right here is fine, yeah.
You're gonna pass it around, they're pretty heavy.
Yeah, I don't know if we just want to.
Well, we're not sure on the tops of the Capitol's owner, I think, prefers this as a cast stone versus a burnished stone.
Okay.
Can you
This
maybe
is a
go back
pier.
to the elevation
Yeah.
so we can see what?
Sure. So you prefer this one? Or
That's, yeah, the one, I just talked to the owner just now. He said
Okay.
he'd prefer to have the cast. This is the color of the upper, darker brown wood. And these colors here are either the back, or the trim and the back color, and I'm not sure, are we gonna go with burgundy, I think, on the lines?
Pass these around.
So, wanna pass this around?
It'll be the first time.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yep,
That's really nice.
it matches the gray.
Mm-hmm. Stands out.
Here's
I don't know if you wanna keep these, or just that
No, I mean, they're-
sheet over there has a list of all the names of the colors.
Okay.
You don't really want all
No,
this.
we don't. No.
Because we like to hold on to it too for.
Sure.
for references.
This is the masonry.
Nice.
It's pretty nice. Neutral color.
Yeah, it's got an ashlar pattern. It's not like split face block.
Okay.
It's a special one. It looks like stone when it's, applied.
Looks good. Nice.
Yep. So staff recommends approval for this. They're pending these different items, including color samples, landscaping plans to include the species list, and approval by forestry, the details of some of the lighting and the photometric plans as well. Also just compliance with the stormwater management ordinance, estimated costs for the paving, landscaping, and screening, and then we would recommend a surety bond for this project as well.
Zach, could
This
you go
part
back
we're
to
not-
the elevation?
Yeah, of course.
for me? Could you talk about the storefront? Are you gonna do anodized aluminum or,
Yeah,
and did you guys talk about spandrel or is it all gonna be clear glass?
that'll be all clear at this point. I don't see any reason to put a spandrel.
The salon might have privacy glass in it, just because of.
Sure.
Any other questions?
This property is immediately south of Wild Toyota, right? I have the right place?
Yep.
Mhm.
And do you know the name of the coffee shop? We don't know anything at this point. We're just making some suggestions. We don't have anybody locked in. That's our preference.
We're gonna design it as a coffee shop.
Mhm.
And set it up as a coffee shop and advertise it as a coffee shop
Yeah.
location.
All right.
there's pretty strong interest, I think, in the city too. Recently, I think the economic development teams had several different coffee shops interested in just land or buildings here in the city. So
At least 3.
yeah, so
We have
definitely.
multiple suggestions from the city about a coffee shop in that street.
Yeah.
I can't release the names.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries.
You want to keep that one sheet or want me to take it? It's
we
got the
can-
list of the colors on
That
it.
one.
Yeah, sure.
Instead,
Yeah,
you
that'd be
can
good.
Scan it and send it back.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Jim.
I'm not going to use these, so
Okay, perfect.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
phone picture it or what?
Yeah, we could do that too. We could take a picture of it too and just give it back to him. Yeah. Good idea.
Magic.
All right. Then we'll move on to item 4. Turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mayor. This next item is for Cleveland Liquor, located at the southeast corner of Cleveland and 92nd Street. So this is a liquor store renovation. Their storefront has just over 2,600 square feet, and they are proposing to add an ADA ramp to increase accessibility. This is in the C2 neighborhood commercial district. Alcohol beverage sales is a permitted use in the C2 district, and that is regulated by licensing. They do have their Class A liquor license, which was issued this year. So here's a look at their floor plan. They'll be adding a new front door down here. So down is north. They'll be adding a basement door in the middle of their store space, removing several walls throughout. There used to be just different rooms throughout here. This used to be an office. They'll be moving the restroom into this back space here. And in place of those walls that were removed, they're adding structural beams and columns throughout here. That's what these lines are for. Their main purpose here with this project is to add their ADA ramp, which is why they're before us here today. The owner wants to increase accessibility with that. The ramp would be made out of a concrete surface with wood handrails and posts. The ramp is at grade on the west elevation and then wraps its way up to the north entrance. The planters on the west facade would need to be removed to make way for this ramp. The existing steps that are north of the store would be replaced, and building inspections has asked that the footings come down to basement level, so they should be coming down a few feet further down than this to connect to the foundation of the building. While reviewing this project, we noticed that the property owner does not actually own the property in front of their storefront up to the sidewalk. So what you see shaded in blue here is actually owned by the city. This is city right-of-way. So because of that, they need what's called a privilege of encroachment to build the ramp in front on the northern portion of their property, which is actually city property. So the city is actually in favor of vacating this land to the property owner, and that's still in negotiations right now. It would slightly increase the property owner's taxes, so that's ultimately their decision to make. We do have a few other conditions that we added on here. So these refuse containers are on city property. We would like those moved over to closer to their property. And the retaining wall behind these dumpsters could use some work, so we're asking that to be repaired. And having these old remnant signs from previous businesses removed, as they do not meet code. Here's some more of those signs on the front of the building. So conditions are the moving and creating the four-sided refuse enclosure for those refuse containers and repairing the damaged retaining wall, removing the remnant signage from previous tenant, and increasing the footings of the ADA ramp. We are also asking that they get a major privilege of encroachment, which they are currently working with the attorney's office and engineering office to get that done. And then a right-of-way vacation eventually. Thank you.
When will the remnant sign be removed?
That
Right
would
away?
be, yes, that would be, they would have to get that done, or at least show that on a site plan before we release their building permit.
I'd move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other questions or discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We will go on to item 5.
Thanks, Mayor. With us this evening, we have Anel Molina, the property owner of 7035 Greenfield Avenue. Ms. Molina, can you hear us? There. Okay, good. Thanks for joining us this evening. So, this item consists of a building at 70th, between 70th and 71st and Greenfield Avenue. It's on the south side of Greenfield Avenue. Formerly, it's a mixed-use building. The lower level tenant used to be Book Solid, if you recall. It's been empty for a couple years, but since that time, Ms. Molina is interested in installing a new tenant in the lower level portion of the building, which would include an event space or an assembly in the lower level. And it would be operated pretty much Thursday through Saturday, some exceptions other times during the week, but primarily for corporate events and parties and similar types of assemblies. This is the building as it looks today. Apartment upstairs and empty commercial space downstairs. The building features a sort of a greenish tile base on the exterior facing Greenfield Avenue, and then it transitions up to a white sort of painted masonry, fluted masonry material. These columns here are actually fluted, and it's sort of the same. This is the actual original color here. I'm just going to move this guy. This is actually the original column, fluted column as it comes all the way down. This part down here has been painted over the years, but this part is still in that original masonry look. The upper part of the building is brick, features some ledges, sills, ornamentation over the windows. But so the intent here is really to keep that similar form. One difference is that on the front of the building, you'll notice that there's a single door entry for better ADA access and just better access in general, and more presence as an event space. Ms. Molina would like to add a double door. So instead of one, adding two. And you can see how it's sort of indented in, and basically the next couple slides here, we're going to get into how that's going to be accomplished. But basically, taking out these two angled flanking windows on either side of the single door system, and then installing a double door with new transom windows over the top of the double doors. So it'd be a new storefront system, totally reconfigured facing Greenfield Avenue. It'd give it more storefront presence, and I guess in our opinion, and just given the wider expansive doorways, going from a 36-inch wide opening to 7 feet 8 inches in terms of the width here. And this is just a plan view looking down on it from above. You can see these angled parts are going to be removed, and then they'll be just coming in at more of a right angle to create the space for the double door system. This is Miss Molina here in front of her building, if anybody's wondering. Selfie. There's just some more details. Just again, the scope of the work, and then the other part of the scope here is just to remove. Actually, to add, the architect originally proposed covering those brick or cementitious columns here with a brick veneer, and then also at the base. Some of those tiles at the base are in disrepair, and the idea was to try to match the brick up above. I think it may be a bit of a concern. It's one of the staff's concerns that we called out in the recommendation, that I think it's going to be really hard to try to match that brick up above. And rather than a brick veneer, maybe taking a look at maybe just replacing it with another style of tile. Maybe it's a contrasting color. Ms. Molina was suggesting maybe something a darker color, just to give it some contrast, which I think is a good would be a good fit. And then rather than covering these columns on the northeast and northwest sides of the building, just to leave those in their original sort of presence as they are today. If you want to try to remove the paint from them, that would be okay, but I guess planning would just opt for not covering those cementitious columns here and here. And just a floor plan view, the overall space coming in from those double doors facing Greenfield Avenue, come into sort of a front lobby area and then into the main banquet hall. And then back internally within the building, there's going to be a new kitchen space. It's just sort of a prep area. They're not proposing any deep fryers or hoods or anything like that. It's primarily just a new refrigerator, some new plumbing for caterers to come in and use when they're hosting a party. Otherwise, there's going to be a new bathroom area created back here, and the rest of this is pretty much existing. Just a closer view of the front entry as you're coming in to the banquet hall area. There is internally some furnishings within the building for a electric fireplace, and then over here just painting, retexturing the walls, repainting, cleaning it up. And then back where most of the interior work is going to be done with the new bathroom areas, men and women's areas, sink area within the kitchen, refrigerator, ice maker. So pretty straightforward. Just a site plan. The location within downtown is the south side of Greenfield Avenue. There is parking on the site. There's two for sure parking stalls, depending on the size of the vehicle, maybe 3. There is an existing refuse enclosure as well as a staircase, exterior staircase up to the second floor apartment unit, which is existing. And then just in terms of available parking within the area, there's just a portion of some of the existing parking within the downtown area on the south side of Greenfield Avenue. There's more of it as you go further west of 72nd Street, or if you go north of Greenfield Avenue, there's a similar mirror image north of Greenfield Avenue. So there's really no deficiency of available parking within the area to host and support this use or other businesses within the downtown. So we're recommending approval, subject to a couple of those things we just talked about with the changing, instead of the brick veneer on the exterior of the front of the building, to take a look at maybe a more appropriate style of tile at the underneath, and then not doing any brick veneer or tile on those columns in the northeast and northwest corners. Aside from that, that's our recommendation. And Ms. Molina, I don't know if you have anything you want to clarify, but or talk about, but.
No, I'm pretty sure the opportunity is fantastic. I mean, actually, I can see in the video that my lovely architects are behind the table, and I think the opportunity is great. I have got a lot of solicitation from theater companies, for other people who wants to rent a small venue, conference. It's very simple, and I think the restaurants are going to benefit a lot from that. There is opportunity for a lot of catering companies to do. I will follow the recommendations, and as soon as I find what kind of title we can put in the base and the front, I will bring it to you, and maybe you can walk around and we can see what is the best looking alternative for what we want to do.
Perfect.
That's it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
I have a question about the kitchen.
Sure.
She said her architecture was, oh, hi. There were staircases in the kitchen. Where did that go to?
No, the staircase would be behind by that back door that goes to the basement.
Oh, is that for the, okay, I thought I
It's
saw a
a big
staircase in
storage
there.
area in the basement, but that's,
Sure.
appears
Oh,
to be.
there it is.
Appears to
Okay.
be a fire-rated stair enclosure to the basement.
Okay.
What was your question?
I just didn't know where it went to.
Oh.
That's all.
Any other questions?
Are you the architect on it?
I'm not saying anything. No, yeah, we are.
Do you have any thoughts on the material to be used?
What was the question? Well, you mean for the front outside? Well, I agree with the city. We had a conversation on that. There are some other elements along the side. There's basically a fluted, sort of a masonry, but from the belt down, that's where that tile is, and that could be probably replaced with a little nicer looking tile. It's deteriorated.
Sure.
So I agree.
There's some
And
sort-
also it'd be tough, she wanted the brick on the side going up, but that would be tough to match the existing brick.
Okay.
So I think if they clean up all the stone on that and maybe even paint it, it could look pretty nice.
Okay. So you're in agreement with staff's
Yeah, right, yeah.
recommendations? Okay.
Any other questions? You guys are kind of slow on the motions.
Move
folks.
approval.
Usually Wayne's firing them off
Yeah.
90 a minute. Get a motion
I'll second.
And a second, thank you. If there's no other discussion on the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Molina. Have a good night. Okay.
Thank you.
It's the first time I've ever heard you guys called beautiful.
Did she say that?
She did.
She's got
My
a-
beautiful architects.
Interesting sense of humor.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you too. Have a nice Christmas.
Take care. Thanks.
You got anything?
We'll move on to item 6.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. So this is the Motor Castings Building at 1323 South 65th and 6500 Washington Street. And I think my some of my animations are a little glitchy here, but so anyway, what's proposed here is to demolish this building at the 1323 South 65th Street site, as well as a small portion of the same building on the 6500 West Washington Street site. And I'm just going to, my animations are a little mixed up here, but this is another view. This is 65th Street here on the east side of the property. And this is roughly about where the property more or less ends. And then if you go south of here, property was subdivided earlier this year via CSM, and another business, Water Clock Engineering, has purchased the building, the old Motor Castings office building and shop buildings to the south. But everything north, roughly of where this fence line ends here, is still owned by Dalton Corporation, which is the parent company of Motor Castings. Motor Castings is gone. They've been gone since about 2019, and since that time, the plan has been to bring the building down. The city's rezoned this portion here from M1 manufacturing to C3 community commercial district, and the whole idea is to sort of create a redevelopment area of this property, as well as some others in the nearby that have recently come onto the into the radar on 65th and Greenfield area Avenue. I'm just going to sort of uncover some of these. I must not have added animation here, but
Maybe you can just delete it.
yeah, that's probably best, eh? Just another bird's eye view. Oh, here we go. This is better. So here are the two properties, 65th Street, Greenfield Avenue on the very south. The Reunion Restaurant is here. The Cousin Subs Restaurant is here. And then you have the old Alice Chalmers complex behind it. There's a rail spur that runs up to the north, city limits. And then these are the two properties where those buildings that we had just shown are located. So there's a small portion here that's going to be demolished. And then pretty much all of the 1323 site is pretty much all building. There's maybe a % of it that's just some open land. But in total, about 115,000 square feet of building are going to be removed by May of 22. They're going to start demo after getting through the planning commission process for what's the future site condition of this property, and getting that approved. Then a building permit or a demo permit would be issued, followed by the actual work commencing in January, and then leading up to final completion in the spring of the year next year. There's a little bit more detail in terms of the actual building areas that are going to be removed. About 13,000 square feet here, and then the rest of it, the other 102,000 plus square feet. And some different grades that are going to be created on the site. The whole overall idea is once the building comes down, to regrade the site and bring it back down as close as possible to the sidewalk or street level, and taking into consideration some of the adjacent grades and doing some sloping, and then getting a gradual, making sure that the water runoff works and doesn't run off onto other properties, and just creating a green site for the future redevelopment scenario, which is to be determined. There will be proper erosion control and all of that built into the whole demo permit process. So just a bird's eye view of the overall area. Again, these two properties, and then there are two old, what I believe to be Alice Chalmers buildings on the very far northeast corner of the 6500 property. Those will be preserved. They actually are brick buildings. They're hard to see. They've been covered up over the years with a lot of vegetation or just different growth, but this is actually a bike pedestrian ramp that comes down to 64th and Mineral Street right here. But that building, there's actually a taller building and a little bit shorter building right here, and those will be preserved as they're not part of the demo scope. Just another bird's eye view of what that looks like. So, yeah, no, they're actually kind of cool buildings, and then, depending on, not really knowing what the future holds, but knowing that the city wants to redevelop this area for some, higher and better use, they could come in kind of, as attractive buildings that could be adapted or reused in some fashion down the road, and serve future development nicely in this area. So we'll see.
Oh, so they're gonna preserve them?
Yeah, just these two, yeah. Wayne?
Thank you, Mayor. On the other side of the coin, if those buildings remain and a future developer says, I don't want those buildings, now we're going to be stuck with that cost, right?
Well, the future developer could decide to come back to Planning Commission and propose another plan, like whether it's reusing those or demoing those for something else. But yeah, but for the time being, the thought is to keep them because they look like they have some value, that they could be interesting features for a redevelopment.
Mr. Yanni's trying to talk.
Oh, sure.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No problem.
Wouldn't we as a city be better served if we had Dalton take those down? Have a clear space?
That's an option, but I think just given the fact that there are brick buildings and that they do have some pretty nice expansive window openings in them, you can see, I guess, just the optimist maybe thinking along the same line as the mayor, like some kind of food truck court or something along that line, or some kind of little active space here centered around those buildings, which could be have open door, outdoor beer gardens, just one possible scenario. Those could be a nice start for something along that line. That's just one off the cuff crazy idea, but yeah.
Crazy, yeah.
Yeah.
Could be a cafe off the bike trail.
Sure. Yeah.
Right in the, all right.
Mr. Yanni, do you have any questions or comments at this point? Or Corbin?
No, and I appreciate everyone's time this evening, but, the intent was to try and do something with this property that, honors its 100-year history within the community, and then, the two buildings in the northeast corner, just thinking historically of, the relation to Alice Chalmers, that's why we felt compelled to maintain those and not look at them. And from Dalton's point of view, the main issue is just uncovering and removing any potential issues associated with the larger footprint of the boundary. So, but we are highly motivated to get moving on the project.
Great, thank you.
Another question for Steve. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The area that's going to be demolished, has a comprehensive environmental inspection been done? In other words, do we know what we're going to be exposed to?
For the most part. And maybe
Not all of it.
Some of it's an adventure, but Jacob or Corbin, how do you guys address that? I know there's probably a phase one.
Yeah, we've had a phase one. on the property when it was purchased back in 2017. And more recently, there's been lead and asbestos testing, and all that's being remediated. In fact, next Monday morning will be teams in there removing the asbestos, and we did not find any lead, so we don't foresee any issues.
Given that it's a very, very old foundry, over 100 years, and I've been in it many, many times, wading through
Foundry sand.
every sort of mixture you can imagine, I thought that it might uncover more stuff.
Yeah.
It's our understanding in the underground tanks have been removed, but that is something we'll work through if we happen to uncover any underground tanks. Corbin and his team have been through that foundry a year ago and removed the sand and the items that were traditionally on the floor at the foundry. It's not broom clean, but it has been removed. We've had chemicals taken out of there recently, so from an environmental standpoint, it's literally going to be pulling up cement slabs.
Is there any soil borings done on this site? Or
Pardon?
is there any soil boring reports, or will there be any soil borings on this site?
No, there will not.
So I think the idea too is that with the new development, there will probably be a cap. Ultimately, I mean, there will probably be some kind of cap feature. I mean, that there are pits here, but it's not like it's. I don't believe there's basements or anything like that. So it's really going to be, the whole idea is going to be the future development to be slab on grade type of development.
Other questions?
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will
Thanks,
now
Jacob. Thanks, Corbin.
go on to
Thank
item,
you all.
thank you. We'll go on to item 7, JD's Pub.
Thank you, Mayor. This next item is JD's Pub, and Joel, the owner, is here representing his project. So Joel is proposing to install a gas fire pit in the back patio of his bar. The tavern is a special use in the C2 district, and a special use permit was granted for this property in May 2010. And this image just shows a general area of where the fire pit will be.
It looks great, sounds good. I'd move approval.
All right,
Second.
Very good.
okay.
Now you guys are warming up.
Joel did meet our conditions of approval today, which was to update a site plan with the removal of a structure that was recently raised and to apply for a demolition permit.
So we're all set.
We're all set.
All right. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries.
Thank you, Joel.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 7.
Thank you, Mayor. This next item is a certified survey map for the Max Miners property. If you recall, this was approved about a year ago, sometime last year. So one of their conditions of approval was to combine the two lots into one lot. So if you see my cursor here, there used to be an alleyway here that was vacated to make a larger parking lot. And let me just show you some of the images of what it looks like today. So this is what you approved, and if you recall, we also approved the sign appeal for their master sign plans. That's the first of other signs to come. And there's another sign in the back, and here's a look at that parking lot with the alleyway that's been vacated. And there's that second sign on the back of the building. Staff recommends approval. Any questions?
Second.
Steve, you mentioned if we have a quorum, plan commissioner can abstain and you still meet the quorum requirements, correct?
That's correct,
Then
yes.
I will abstain from voting on this item.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And record one abstention? All right, motion carries. Thank you. And now we have item 9.
Thank you, Mayor. This last item, I believe, before we talk about zoning code updates, is sign plan appeal for Oak Brewery. This was also approved for their special use permit back in November 2020. So they're a new brewery restaurant. They're currently under construction, hoping to open in the spring. They recently submitted their sign plan, and these are the approved signs as part of that sign plan, but there was one sign that does not quite meet our code because it is a painted sign, but it does meet our creative sign criteria because it is an aesthetic improvement to the site, it's of unique design, and provides strong graphic character. So this sign will be added to the back part of their building, so it'll be viewable from their rear parking lot, and it'll be about that size in between these garage doors and these planters.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Wayne, sorry.
What's the difference between this signage proposal and what was here before?
So these signs have some dimension to them. All of the signs that meet our code have to have some sort of dimension, so pop-out letters or a unique design. This, while it does have a unique design, is considered a flat sign because it's painted on the wall. So that's why it doesn't meet our code. But we believe that it does meet our creative sign criteria. And
It certainly continues the trend of having some great signs in our city. Let's get it done.
right?
Is that a motion?
That's a motion. And a second.
Second.
All right. We have a motion to a second. If there's no other discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And then we'll go to item 10.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So this is we wanted to give you guys kind of an overview of the start and the scope of our work for our zoning code update. In the last month or two, we've started to kind of dive into the details of this, and so we just want to kind of give you guys a first look at some of the things that we're going to be looking to change and improve in the zoning code. So the overall purpose, this is something we did something we did, we wanted to kind of take a step back. The zoning code hasn't been really overhauled since 1995, which was, fun fact, before I was born. So this is, 25 years is a pretty good time to, rethink these things. And we wanted to kind of take a step back and figure out what those kind of goals we're going to have for our update. The first one is we really want it to be easier to use, and this is something that the attorney's office is working on with the entire code as well. Kale from that office, he's been kind of helping us as well as we've started to go into this, but we wanted to reorganize the structure of it, make things more readable, make the language easier to understand for everyday people who have a very difficult time looking through our code right now, and also get rid of some of these redundant elements or outdated things that were maybe relevant back in 95 but aren't relevant anymore. Another objective is to expand the amount of taxable value in the city. So we want to allow more density where it's appropriate, create more flexibility for developers, and lower some of these burdens that our code currently has for them. And then our third objective is to make sure that when we're updating this code, it fits the West Dallas of today and the future. So we're going to be removing some of these obsolete kind of remnants of the past, adapting some of the more modern best practices in zoning to West Dallas's context, and then throughout all these things try to make sure we're protecting the character of our neighborhoods that we have already. So the kind of 5 broad categories of changes we're going to be making are updating the format of the code, which will go a long way towards making it easier for people to use, consolidating our zoning districts, cleaning the zoning uses, improving the bulk control measures that we use, and then modernizing our parking code. So kind of going into each of these then. So the format, the two big changes are we're going to have a new organization within our zoning code section. Right now, the bulk of it is listed out district by district, and everything within those are lists, and it's just very cumbersome to use. You have to do a lot of cross-referencing to figure out what exactly could be done here and there. So we're going to be kind of taking a step back and having this general administrative section, then looking at our districts, uses, form, parking, and plan development, so that somebody could reasonably start at the beginning of our zoning code and knowing their project, go step by step to understand what they could do to their property, kind of moving it through that process in a more natural way than it currently is set up. And we also, this is something that the attorney's office is going to do with a lot of the other parts of our zoning code, but parts of our municipal code, but shift to a table-based code, which makes things a lot easier to see and compare. This is an example from Hartford, Connecticut. They won an APA Best Practice Award basically for their zoning code update they did about, I think, 5 years ago. And this is just an example of what a table-based code might look like. So this is their zoning use or their principal use table. So you can see they have things like, maybe somebody wants to build a hotel, and they can see in whatever district whether it's permitted or not. They can kind of compare those all together. So that's something that a table-based code would go a long way towards making our code cleaner and more efficient. And it makes it easier to update too, because it's just versus having all these reference numbers and additions to it, it's kind of this simple, comprehensive thing.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, we can skip back.
What do we have now? It's not table-based, but what is it called?
It's, I guess, list-based. It's just, you'll see, like, in our C1 district, we just have a huge list of 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, and it just goes on and on to, like, with all the
Yeah,
different uses.
Turn the page and keep following the list until
Yep.
you find your use. So
Yeah.
just more heads up this way.
And a table-based code is clearly easier to use?
Yeah.
Cleaner?
Definitely. Yep. Yeah, and our attorney's offices with the rest of the municipal codes, they're shifting to that format too, and it's easier for them to update as well. So kind of
Thank
all
you.
around big improvement.
Cleaner online too, which is, everything's sort of on our online code, so it's going to be much easier, fewer clicks on the mouse when you're looking at it.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. We already when we're like with our uses, we've already kind of made a table just for us to reference so it's because it takes so long to go into the municipal code and find every specific use and district. So that's definitely something that would be nice to have for everybody.
When do you intend to have this in place?
That would be within the municipal code, and it would be throughout. There would be different, in the district section, it would have a table of all of our districts. In the use section, it would have a table of all of the uses in
Oh,
which
sorry, but
districts.
this project will be completed when?
Oh, this will be complete. Yeah,
Well, we
Steve
wanna-
was very nice for that.
We want to actually have a similar presentation at the Safety and Development meeting, Safety and Development Committee on the 14th of December. And then following their input and direction, I think we could probably roll this out probably in the second quarter of the next year,
Next year? Not the following year.
22.
Thank you.
So the second kind of big category of changes we're going to be looking at is consolidating some of our zoning districts. We have some zoning districts right now that have very limited applications. So this is a graph of our residential districts on the right. This shows the different districts, so RE, RA, et cetera, and then this shows the number of properties in the city. So you can see RB2 is one of our most common zoning districts. You see that throughout most of the east side of the city for residential uses. But then you also see some of them, for example, RE, our residential estate district, only has 31 lots in the entire city. And so one thing that we're thinking that this update we want to accomplish is kind of making things more efficient. When we have zoning districts that have very limited applications and have very limited differences between, say, RE and RA1, we want to be able to combine those where we can. Another goal of consolidating these districts is to promote conformance of existing lots. We have, and I'll get into this a little later too, but there's a lot of residential lots right now that are actually like non-conforming in terms of lot widths and setbacks, and we want to make sure that people can build something that fits the neighborhood and it's allowed there. Like right now we have some neighborhoods where you can't build, you couldn't really build what looks like the normal kind of house in those neighborhoods. So that's something we want to move towards. And here's just an example of that. So, like as I mentioned, one suggestion we're going to make probably is to merge this RE district into RA1. So this is our RA1, and see this little peninsula right here, that's RE. So in our proposal, it would be merging those together to create this single district for our large single-family lots. So that's just kind of an example of one of those changes we would make. All right, so then our third category, and this is something that we're working on right now, and if this is probably one of the longest stages of it, but cleaning up our zoning uses. So right now we have hundreds of zoning uses that are very specific, and some of them are very outdated, and that's kind of going to be something we're going to be working on. But to start this, we want to use different terminology. So right now we use permitted use, special use, and transitional use. And then at the kind of suggestion, I guess, of our attorney's office, we want to switch to using permitted use as we normally do, limited use, which would kind of clarify different uses that have some limitation, but if they meet that limitation, then they're permitted, like our tobacco retailers. So if they're, beyond a certain distance from another tobacco retailer, then they're permitted. And that kind of clarifies for people when they look at it, they know, exactly kind of what they're going to need to do to meet that. So that's another kind of change we'd make. And then switching from special use to conditional use, which is just, I guess, a better term for that kind of use. We also want to remove some obsolete uses. So this is just an example of some of the interesting, sometimes funny uses we've found in our zoning code. Right now, we have this thing called a millinery shop, which is, I didn't know this until I
Does
looked at it.
anybody here know what a millinery shop is?
No.
Is it like a hat shop?
Yeah.
Women's hat shop, specifically.
Yep.
Haberdashery is
Wow.
a men's shop.
Yes.
I'm impressed.
So we have this very specific use, which isn't exactly, and nobody knows what that is, and it's not very relevant anymore. Things like a mail order
Except
catalog
Amanda.
store. Yes, true. Things like a mail order catalog store, I'm pretty sure don't exist anymore. Stuff like that. So we're going to be kind of removing some of these overly detailed, overly specific, outdated uses.
Cool.
We also want to clean things up by combining like uses into broader categories. So these are examples of a bunch of different shops, types of shops that we just allow where they're permitted in all of our commercial and manufacturing districts. Things like bike shops, book shops, hobby shops, pharmacies, etc. Following the model of other cities, we want to create a new broader category called like neighborhood retail. So that category would encompass all of those uses which have similar permissions. That would make things a lot cleaner, and it would help us really significantly help us cut down from hundreds of uses that you have to parse through to figure out what your business you want to open is, to just a much cleaner, smaller list.
And if somebody wanted to create a millinery or haberdashery or a trophy sales or a video arcade, they could under neighborhood retail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. Yes.
Yeah.
Does not limit those.
Right.
Yes. And so then our kind of idea with this is to have, we'd have general categories of uses like retail or service or residential, and then we would have most of our regulations be at the subcategory level. So things like neighborhood retail or general retail or large retail developments, which would encompass kind of many different specific uses. But those really sensitive uses that we want to make sure we can still control a little bit more, we would still regulate at that level. So things like a dollar store, we would still have a category just for those. So it wouldn't be getting rid of some of the work people have done over the years to make sure we have uses where we want them to be. Another part of the zoning use updates would be to change some permissions. This is just one example. I don't think we have a ton of these permission changes we'd be making. Most of them are just a very specific use that would be going to meet the broader category. One thing we found is there's a lot of really specific uses that are allowed in C1 but not specifically mentioned elsewhere, which can make confusion because people might think, oh, it's only allowed in C1, which is pretty limiting. But one example of a change we might do is allowing assembly uses to be in some of these C2, C3, C4 districts that they weren't before. So just making sure we get things where the city would like to see them. We also want to better specify accessory uses, which right now we have just some mentions here and there, but we would create a section devoted to accessory uses. Have a table to show them in the districts, and then define them if need be, and add conditions if need be. We'd also then improve the bulk controls. This is just an example of what a bulk control table might look like for our existing code. There's a lot in there, but it is definitely cleaner than it currently is. And we'd be proposing, by eliminating some of these districts and stuff, that it would be getting even easier to read. But we'd also want to update some of these bulk controls to kind of get at our goals we mentioned before. So with our residential zoning districts, one of our big goals is to reduce the number of non-conforming properties and make sure we can allow these desirable building types to be fitting into their context of their neighborhood. So some of the potential changes we might make would be reducing lot area requirements for certain districts, reducing lot width minimums, sometimes adding maximums for some of these different things as well, like front setbacks, for example, too. So with commercial districts, our big goal would be to allow more density to grow the taxable value allowed in the city and allow for more desirable building forms. So one of the big things is to strategically increase the floor area ratio in some of the commercial districts. We see a lot of times where we'll have, maybe a multifamily building that they have to get a variance from the Common Council because they can't build as dense as they want to. And we want to, make sure we're promoting those dense developments that we'd like to see more of. And then lastly, we want to modernize a parking code. So this is one of the best practices in planning that West Allis can kind of jump on at a good time and make sure that we're kind of planning best for the future. So right now we have this minimum base parking code. A lot of this means that a store is, the code is basically set at, we kind of say at the absolute maximum peak time of parking, you have to have at least that much parking. So we're kind of forcing them to over provide for parking. And this causes a lot of problems by filling our city's land with this kind of parking lots that aren't really helping our taxable value, hurt the visual look of the city and the cohesion of the city, discourage development for developers by forcing them to pay for all this expensive parking. And so what we want to shift to is saying, our parking code would say at most you can provide what you need for those peak times, but we don't want you providing more. So that's kind of a shift in thinking that's happened in the planning over the past 25 years, and it's something we really want West Allis to adopt as well. Along with some of that, we would want to add some bike parking requirements. Nothing that would discourage development, just a light requirements to make sure that people biking places have a place to park their bike. And we also want to adjust some of our shared use regulations. So if you have like a strip mall, you aren't forced to provide enough parking for all the uses at all their peak times, but make sure you're being able to be sensitive to, maybe certain businesses are open at different times than others, and, we can make sure that's, not forcing them to have too much parking. So those are kind of our overall big changes we're looking at making. I don't know if you guys have any questions or comments, but that kind of wraps it up for now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That looks great. How is this implemented? Is it done just administratively, or is there any approval process to move this forward, or how does
Yeah,
that?
so we'll have to we want to get direction from the Safety and Development Committee of the Common Council, and then they say go, and then we finish up our ordinance, bring it back to the Planning Commission for another presentation, and if you need to go through a couple plan commissions to sort of absorb it all or review it, need more time to review it, we can, but ultimately we'd come back to council for public hearing and ultimately wrap it up. Yeah.
In regards to the parking, are you also reviewing just general standards as far as as far as I understand, current trends are just less parking is being required in multifamily and certain developments, less people have cars. Are you also looking at kind of?
Yeah, we aren't just thinking of flipping it from our current numbers from minimum to maximum, but we're kind of we're looking at a variety of different sources and stuff to where we'll be tweaking our actual numbers. And I think our two kind of best references that we've been using are the city of Hartford, which won an award for their zoning code, and I think the city of Madison as well, who recently switched to a maximum base code. And just to give us idea for some references, one kind of better way to regulate parking for a restaurant rather than by square footage but by capacity. It's something that makes more sense. So saying, you can't have more, one space per, every 3 people, going towards your capacity or something like that as a maximum. So that's, we're looking at changing some of that stuff as too. So it's not just flipping from minimum to maximum. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you said this is still gonna go to the safety committee?
Yeah.
So then I'm sure they'll take into consideration the international building code and firewalls and for creating maximum or increased building spaces.
Yeah, and a lot of that too, I mean, so the building code's completely separate from zoning, but we are, I mean, it's something we're looking at through our occupancy permit process and trying to align the two a little bit better, because it does get confusing when, we're working with customers or.
Yeah, sometimes we have a different requirement than what meets the IBC, and then it just adds that extra layer of confusion. So where we can match them up, we want to do that.
Anyone else have any questions? All right. So this is just an informational item, so we don't need a motion, but we do need a motion if we want to adjourn.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Yes, Merry
Merry
Christmas.
Christmas.
Have a nice.